Hi, my name is Joseph, and I want to discuss Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, which came out August 1st, 2014. So, as a quick reminder, I purposefully watched the second one first and then the first one before the second one. This is my second time viewing both of the movies. The first time I watched both Volume 1 and Volume 2 was in theaters. The first time I saw both movies, I did feel like the first one was a lot better than the second one. That's why I made the conscious choice this time to watch the second one first and then the first one. And I'm really happy that I did. As a quick reminder, with my Volume 2 impressions, when I rewatched it the first time, I really enjoyed it. I was quite shocked with my original impression. I thought I was being too hard on it, being a little bit elitist maybe, right? Oh, it's MCU. I'm not gonna say it's better than the original because it's not. But after watching the first one, excuse me, no, I hit my cat a little bit, pardon about that, towards her. Excuse me. So when it came after I finished watching the first one, I'm gonna have to agree with my past self. Hands down, personally, I do think Volume 1 is a lot better than Volume 2. What makes Volume 1 so much more quote unquote fun, in my opinion, is the fact that there's a lot of supporting cast that actually assists with the main cast. We have not just the protagonists, the Guardians of the Galaxy, but also the Ravagers who end up assisting in the final act, and in addition to that, Nova Corps, who also ends up assisting and unfortunately doing a self-sacrifice as well. Essentially, what I really liked about Volume 1 was how the movie was much more of a team effort versus Volume 2. And to be honest, Volume 2 for me just felt a little bit more claustrophobic in terms of its characters. I felt like after the first one it just felt very big, very grand. We start off with Nova Prime, or rather we start off with the random planet and then Nova Prime and then the prison and then nowhere. We just go through so many different locations. The setting felt very big and vast. I felt like this was a galaxy faring adventure. Lawless with the second one, although they do go to multiple locations, for the fact that they don't really have a huge supporting cast. I mean, I'm being a little bit biased as well, or maybe not biased, but unfair, because there is a supporting cast for Volume 2. Obviously, I'm not the biggest fan, so I don't know the specific names, but the gold-raced individuals, that people, obviously they are a different group of people, but I think because they're all golden, they all just kind of look similar and they look the same. And then in addition to that, they don't pilot their own ships. For the majority of the movie, they seem to be remote piloting them from a secure area. Not like Nova Corps, where they were all the pilots were inside their spacecraft and they were in the thick of the battle. And again, unfortunately, there was a self-sacrifice that was made, and not only was the vehicles destroyed, but unfortunately there was a loss of life as well. So I just really appreciated those aspects about Volume 1. And also, what I really enjoyed about Volume 1 too is how much the director James Gunn was able to do. I do believe he had a lot on his plate to tell the story of this ragtag group of individuals who end up meeting in this movie, and they end up forming a group and deciding to stick together. The movie is quite long. It's over 2 hours long, but I don't think the runtime is a waste of time. I think it's utilized quite efficiently in such a way that the audience will feel attached to the characters and to the protagonists. So, something that I seem to always complain about when I discuss Marvel movies is the Marvel humor. And thankfully, it seems like this first Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, it has less of that Marvel humor. At least there is still humor, there is still comedy, but when I say Marvel humor, I consider it to be more like superficial comedy. It's obvious, and it's just pointing out the obvious, and we're meant to chuckle at that because the characters are pointing it out. Thankfully, that type of humor I don't think is as prevalent within Volume 1, and I really do appreciate that. And in fact, it makes me kind of regret how Volume 2 started leaning more into that Marvel humor. But again, despite that, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy, both Volume 1 and Volume 2, they hold up quite well, especially when compared to other Marvel movies. In addition to that, I am also being biased as well with the first one because I am a big sci-fi fan. Mass Effect being one of my favorite franchises and quite possibly my favorite game series. And the end of Volume 1 really reminded me, made me reminisce about Mass Effect 3 when Commander Shepard goes to the Mass Relay, or rather the Normandy goes to the Mass Relay, and they have all the support behind them from the Krogans, the Tyrians, the Assyrians, the Koreans, and so forth, right? So, excuse me, I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent. But again, I think that's why I really did appreciate Volume 1 so much, because in terms of its writing, in terms of its runtime, it's all done in such a way that it makes the audience feel like, well, they're in for an adventure. They're not wasting their time. Again, with the second movie, there was a couple of instances, or more than a couple of instances, where it really did feel like it was just luck. When I say luck, I mean like, well, how are the characters surviving? How are they being able to do this? I like how it seems to be less of that in the first one. And the first one was more about the characters choosing to do their actions and then fully going along with it. Like for example, in the second one, a pretty decent example I have is just when Nebula chases Gamora into the cave, and somehow she's able to keep going, and the ship is fine and it blows up, but Nebula is fine. That just seemed like a lot of luck. And I know one might be say, well, Joseph, what about in Volume 1 when Rocket towards the end he goes through the helm and he crashes into Rohan, who's holding on to Drax at that point. That was also luck, right? But it just wasn't as the ship didn't blow up. The one that Rocket was piloting, it didn't blow up. And they showed Quill taking Rocket out. It just wasn't as far-fetched, if that makes sense. If that makes sense. Excuse me. If that makes sense. Would I recommend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1? Oh my gosh, yes, I really would. I'm going to have to say, I'm not the biggest MCU fan, but my favorite properties is definitely the first Doctor Strange movie. And after rewatching the Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy, as a whole, I think Guardians of the Galaxy is my favorite, but definitely the first one, Volume 1, might be my favorite Marvel movie. And let me rephrase that. Might be my favorite Marvel movie that's not a team-up movie. Because I think it's important to separate the individual movies from the team-up movies. They're operating in a different style, a different way. Really quick example about this would be, it's been a while since I've seen it, but in the Avengers Endgame, I'm not the biggest fan of how, I think it's David Russell, whoever, or Kevin Feige, whoever did the Endgame movies. I'm not a big fan of how the personalities they gave to the Guardians of the Galaxy. And I can't help but feel like maybe that's because it's not by James Gunn. It was by another, or I think two other, those brothers, are they twins? Excuse me, again, I'm not the biggest MCU individual fan, so I might be getting some details incorrect, both in terms of the comics and also in terms of the cinematic universe, so excuse me. But yeah, so would I recommend Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2? Yes, I really would. With that being said, though, really quickly, if one has seen Guardians of the Galaxy already, I think it'll be a lot more prudent to watch Volume 2 and then Volume 1. Now, there are some drawbacks to doing that, mostly being the fact that one needs to recall some minor details. For example, I was fortunate enough that for whatever reason, I did recall in Volume 2 that the Walkman, that did belong to Quill's mother. What I didn't realize, though, was that the cassette tape was more than likely the gift that Quill got from his mother in the first movie. Obviously, one forgets a minor detail like that. It might make you question why is Quill getting so upset at the destruction of his cassette tape. I also do appreciate the continuity as well. For another example of being slightly confused would be if you start with Volume 2, you're going to notice that Nebula, she has one hand, but her other hand, it's destroyed, and she has like a temporary hand. One might be confused about that, what's going on in regards to that. But in the first one, at the end of it, the reason why she has that type of hand is because when she's escaping from the Dark Ether, the Dark Aster, whatever the Rohan's flagship is called, she ends up breaking her own hand to escape onto a Ravager ship and get away. So I do really appreciate the continuity. But with that being said, again, I think it would be prudent to watch the second one before the first one, just because, again, that quality of difference, I think it is quite noticeable. When I say quality difference, I'm not really talking about the writing, more so the contextual set pieces that's involved in both movies. And yeah, hopefully that makes sense. I just think the first movie flows a lot more naturally and organically. And I think what really helps that aspect or that feeling to come up to the forefront is the fact that there's a supporting cast to assist with the main cast. Again, I did discuss this a little bit with Volume 2, but the fact that there's really no villain, I think that's also a detriment to Volume 2. But again, that's why when I first saw Volume 2, I thought it was just an okay movie compared to Volume 1. But this time, seeing Volume 2 before Volume 1, I had the opposite reaction until I rewatched Volume 1. So all of that is just to essentially, again, to encourage everyone. If you have seen Guardians of the Galaxy, I think to have a kind of different experience, don't watch it in order again, Volume 1, Volume 2. Begin with Volume 2, and then go forward with Volume 1. So with that being said, I am quite happy that I rewatched both films. To be honest, it was kind of a last-minute thing. none of my friends we wouldn't really want to watch Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in theaters. So because of that, I really have no plans on seeing it in theaters. But now that I've seen the first two films, I might try to convince a couple of my friends to come with me. If they don't want to go, maybe I'll convince a couple of family members to come with me. If they don't want to go, my cousins, if they don't want to go, then you know what, screw it, I'll just go solo. I especially want to go. So I'm not gonna lie, one of the reasons why I did rewatch these films, and I'll probably be doing a separate video, video about this, is because everyone was praising about James Gunn's portrayal of animal violence and the consequences of that. But I just can't help but feel that's a little bit hypocritical, just because in both movies there's animal violence. In the first movie, you have Quill kicking those space rats. I don't know about you guys, but I've never kicked a rat, and I will feel kind of bad doing so too. And then in the same movie, in the middle, at nowhere, there's a part where Drax and Rocket, they're witnessing gambling, and they are utilizing kind of like cockfights, but with those space rats again and some other space creature. And in the second Guardians of the Galaxy, we once again have some aspects of animal abuse, with Groot riding a space rat like a horse. And he's also choking this space rat as well. So I don't think animals would appreciate that aspect. So that's another reason why I wanted to rewatch the movie, just because yeah, I'll have more thoughts about that once I do watch Volume 3, and I'll more than likely have a separate video discussing that, discussing the aspect about animal violence. I just think it's kind of interesting, kind of like having your cake and eating it too. How can one be against animal violence when they were using animal abuse as a form of comedy? So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I don't sound like I'm being too judgmental, I suppose. But thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you have seen Guardians of the Galaxy, please do. Well, actually, before, I know I already said what I recommended. I think I recommended from the perspective of someone who has seen the film already. What I recommended from the perspective of someone who has not seen any Marvel movies, or has not seen, maybe you have seen the Marvel movies but have not yet seen Guardians of the Galaxy, yes, I would highly recommend it still. To be frank, I think the first Volume 1 stands a lot stronger compared to other Marvel films, especially after Phase 2 and Phase 3. The first volume has I'm not gonna lie, the villain, he's not as intimidating, but he's a satisfying villain. It is quite satisfying to see this villain get in over his head. And it's also really cool, I didn't really talk about this, it's also really cool how Thanos is introduced in this film as well, and we're able to see how much of a presence and how much of a commanding presence that he has as well, a force that force that's behind him, that force that's coming from him internally, right, not externally. But yeah, so would I recommend it? When I've seen it, yes, I would recommend seeing Volume 2 first and then Volume 1. Would I recommend this film for one who has not seen Guardians of the Galaxy? Yes, I definitely would. It's a fun film. And then really quickly as well, it's, some people don't like the ending of the film, the way that Quill does that little dance off a little bit. But I'm not gonna lie, it is silly, but I don't really consider it to be Marvel humor, quote unquote. The reason being is because Quill, he was dancing to distract Rohan. He was doing that to support Rocket, who was getting something ready on the side. I thought that was really cool. And then lastly, a quick tangent. I'm not going to lie, more than likely I'm projecting my love towards Guardians of the Galaxy as well, because I am a big Destiny fan. And after the first time I watched these films, I was not yet playing Destiny. But rewatching it, I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, the Guardians of the Galaxy, they kind of remind me of the Guardians from the Destiny. And I couldn't help but think to myself, oh my gosh, definitely Rocket would be a hunter, Drax and Groot would be Titans. And at first, I was thinking that Gamora would be a warlock and Quill would be a hunter. But now I'm kind of in between. I kind of feel like maybe Quill would be a warlock. The reason being because he utilizes different technology and different strategies while he's fighting, because he's just utilizing guns. While it's Gamora, I think she'll be more a hunter. The reason being because she gets up close and personal with the sword that she utilizes. And she is also really quick with her hands and her feet as well. So I know that's kind of a weird tangent, but I just want to point that out really quickly. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you guys seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, let me know what you thought about it. Do you think Volume 2 is better? If you guys seen Volume 3, does Volume 3 overtake Volume 1 in your opinion? Please do let me know, either in the comments below or via personal messaging. Have a great day and take care, everyone. Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it.